So, good morning to all the webinar team members, principals, teachers, and my dear students. Myself, Muhammad Mujibur Rahman, principal of Telangana Model School, Gavichalla, Warangal Rural District, is taking pleasure to invite you all for today's intermediate first year economics webinar session. So, students, in earlier session, you were explained about the concept of utility. Second unit of the topic, second unit was taken up, wherein utility concept, the laws of utilities, and so on was explained to you. Now, students, in this session, third unit of economics subject, that is demand analysis, will be taken up. Children, you are all aware that you often use the word demand in your daily life when you go to market, where when you are purchasing commodities and so on. This all act, we call it as demand. So this word is often used because we are all consumers, and to satisfy our wants, we'll be demanding the commodities. So children, in this session, you will be taken up deep into the concept of demand. You will be explained about the types of demand, what factors, when you go to market, what factors will be determining the demand for the commodity. You'll be influenced by different factors. So those factors will be discussed in detail. You'll be explained about the law of demand, the most important law, and you'll be explained about the different types of demand. Likewise, different concepts will be explained in this particular session. To present today's topic, I take pleasure in inviting Srimati T.PRAVEENA Madam, working as postgraduate teacher in economics in Telangana Model School, Pudur, Vikarabad district. Coming to Madam's introduction, Madam has done her masters both in economics and English subject from Osmania University, BD also from Osmania University. Before joining Model School faculty, Model School Society, Madam has had a rich experience of over 10 years working as faculty in different reputed junior and degree colleges and has handled different subjects. So students, get ready for the session. All of you, you be ready with your pen and notebooks and note down the important points as soon as it is being told. So I invite Madam now. I invite Madam for the session. Over to you, Praveena Madam, for the session.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, Madam.
Welcome to Intermediate First Year Economics. Today, we'll be learning Unit 3, Demand Analysis. So in this session, children, you will be learning about introduction to demand, factors determining demand, demand function, the demand schedules, law of demand, its assumptions and exceptions, and you will also learn the reasons for negative slope of demand curve, the changes in demand, income demand, and cross demand. The learning objectives of this session are to understand the concept of demand, to analyze the different factors deciding demand for goods and services, to develop insight into building demand schedules, to derive demand curve from demand schedules, and last, to understand the law of demand and its implications. So children, in the previous sessions, you have learned about human wants. So we all know that human wants are unlimited. So in order to satisfy these wants, the humans, they participate in various economic activities.
Praveena ma'am,
Ma'am?
could you please go for
Praveena madam.
slideshow, full screen?
Oh, ma'am. Yeah, ma'am.
Please.
Full screen.
Sorry, I forgot, sir. Is it okay, sir?
Yeah, it's okay.
So
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay, madam. Now.
Shall I continue from
Yes,
first?
yes,
Sir?
continue, madam.
No, sir. Shall I continue or shall I do it from first, sir?
No, you can start, madam. Not a problem. Here only you can start. Not a problem. Yeah.
Okay. So children, in the previous sessions, you have learned that about human wants, and we all know that human wants are unlimited. So to satisfy these unlimited wants, humans, they participate in various economic activities which involves production, consumption, exchange, trade of goods and services. So when we participate, we earn income. So with that income, what we do, we try to demand the commodities. So it means that we wish to purchase goods and services. So in general, the word demand means a desire or a want for something. But in economics, demand means it is much more than a desire. So in generally, want means it is a desire or it is a willingness to buy a commodity. Let us have a clear understanding of this concept with an example. Say children, you may have a desire to buy a car or a laptop, but just having a desire is not enough for a consumer to get that product. You have a desire to buy a car, but you don't have money. Then can we call it as a demand? No, we cannot call it as a demand. Then what is demand? So demand for a commodity, it means that it is the desire to buy a commodity, and along with that, we should have the sufficient purchasing power. It means that we need money income with us. So if you want to buy a car, you don't have enough money, then you cannot call it as demand. And you have enough money, but you don't want to spend it on car, then also it cannot be called as demand. Then children, we'll see the definition of demand. So what is demand? It refers to the desire of an individual to purchase a good or a service supported by his ability to pay. So we have a definition which is given by Benham. The demand for anything of a given price is the amount of it which will be bought as per unit of time at that price. Now children, so you have a clear understanding about what is demand. So there are certain features of demand. So what is demand? A desire for a commodity. And along with that, we should have the ability to purchase the commodity. And not only that, we should be willing to pay the price for that. And always demand is made at a price. Demand is always measured per unit of time. That is per day, per week, per month, or per year. Now children, when we go to a market, so what are the things we keep in our mind before we purchase a commodity? Yes, children, can you answer me? Yes. So first we think about the price of the commodity, isn't it? Then after that, we will see whether any similar goods are there of that product. And next, along with that, we also see we are very much influenced by the advertisements. We'll see whether the product which we have seen in advertisement, we find it in that market, isn't it? So these are all the things which we keep in our mind when we purchase a commodity. So these are all the factors which will influence a consumer when he demand a particular commodity. So let us know about them in detail, children. So the first factor, children, it is the price of the commodity. So you know, this is the most important influencing factor of a demand of a commodity. Why? Because when we purchase a commodity, first we will ask the price of the commodity, isn't it? So now let us see what is the relationship between the price of the commodity and the demand of a commodity. So there is a inverse relationship between price and the demand for commodity. It means that when the price of commodity is high, we demand less of it. And when the price of the commodity is less, we demand more of that commodity. So we'll have a small example for that. See, example, suppose the price of tomatoes is 10 rupees. Then we will purchase 1 kilogram of tomatoes. Now the price of tomatoes has increased to 20 rupees. So what we'll do, children? We'll buy only half kilo of tomatoes. Suppose the price of tomatoes has gone down to only 5 rupees. Then what we'll do? We will increase our demand, isn't it? So we'll buy at least 2 kilos of tomatoes. So what does it mean? It means that when the price of a commodity increases, the demand for a commodity decreases. And in the same way, when the price of the commodity decreases, the demand for a commodity increases. Then second factor, children, this is the price of substitutes and complementaries. What are substitute goods? So those goods which can be substituted for each other or which can be used for same purpose are called as substitute goods. So examples of substitute goods are like tea and coffee, ball pen and ink pen, then Coca-Cola and Pepsi. Then we have many shampoos and soaps, isn't it? So these are all the substitute goods. So now what is the relation between the price of these goods and the demand? So there is a positive relationship between the price and demand. We'll explain with the help of an example. Say children, when the price of tea increases, what happens? People, they don't prefer to buy tea. Why? Because the price of tea has increased. Then what is the substitute good of tea? Coffee is the substitute good of tea. So they prefer to buy coffee. It means that when price of tea increases, the demand for its substitute good, that is coffee, will increase. Next one is complementary goods. So what are complementary goods, children? These are the goods which are used jointly to satisfy a particular want. Example, automobiles and fuel. So these are the complementary goods. So what is the relation between these goods and the demand for these goods? So there is a negative relationship between the price and the demand for complementary goods. See, when the price of fuel increases, what happens? There will be a fall in the demand for automobiles. And when there is a fall in the price of fuel, either the petrol or diesel, then what happens? More people, they wish to use these automobiles. So there is a inverse relationship between the price and demand of complementary goods. So this is also one of the important determining factor deciding the demand. Then another factor, children, it is the income of the consumer. So we know that most of the people, they participate in production activities. So with that, they'll earn the income, isn't it? So when the income of the consumer increases, what happens? His purchasing power will increase. So what is meant by purchasing power? It means that he will be able to demand more commodities, or he'll be able to purchase more amount of goods and services. So it means that the demand for commodities also will increase. But when income increases, the demand for normal goods will increase. So what are normal goods? All the basic necessary goods like food grains, the medicines, and clothes. So these are the essential goods. So when the income of a person increases, the demand for normal good will increase. And when the income increases, the demand for inferior goods, it will decrease. The people, they don't prefer to buy the inferior goods. Then another factor, children, the taste and preference. So this is also very important factor which will influence the demand of a commodity. So the taste and preference of the consumer, it will be influenced by advertisements, change in fashion, climate, tick change, and new inventions. See that the consumers, what they'll do is they will develop a taste and preference for those commodities, then the demand for those commodities will increase. And when the consumers had no taste or no preference for a particular commodity, then the demand for that commodity will decrease. See, people are very much influenced by the advertisements, isn't it? So just by looking at the products shown in the advertisement, we just get influenced by that, and we prefer, our preference and taste will change. And when there is a change in the fashion, most of the consumers, they want to update their fashions, so they don't demand those goods which are out of fashion. So the products which are out of fashion will have a less demand. So if you look at this, earlier people used to wear dhotis, but due to change in the fashion, people, many of the people, they stop using wearing dhotis. Now most of them, they prefer to wear trousers or jeans, isn't it, children? So the taste and preference of the consumer is very important factor which determines the demand of a commodity. The next, another factor, children, it is population. So when there is an increase in the size of the population, the demand for certain commodities will increase. So what are those commodities? Food grains, clothes, housing. So demand for these commodities will increase. So when there is a decrease in the size of population, definitely the demand for these goods will decrease. So size of population is also an important factor which determine the demand of a commodity. Then another factor, children, it is technological changes. So due to technological changes or technical progress, what happens is new inventions come into the market, or new discoveries, they enter into the market. So as a result, what happens is new commodities, consumers will get new commodities. So in such situation, the old goods will be substituted by new goods. An example for this is, children, see, earlier, most of us, see, we used to have landline phones. Okay. But due to progress in the technology, what happened? New cell phones have been introduced. So the the landlines are being replaced by cell phones. And in many offices also, the typewriters, people used to use typewriters, but those typewriters are also being replaced by computers. So why this change has come? Due to change in the technology. So demand of a commodity is also influenced by the change in the technology. Another factor, children, it is changes in weather. So we know that there will be a change in the climatic conditions. So due to change in the climatic conditions, the demand for the commodity also will change. Let us have an example. So during summers, most of us, we demand cool drinks, cotton clothes, ACs, etc. Isn't it? So the demand for these goods will increase. And during winters, what happens? Again, our preference, we demand woolen clothes. So why this change in demand? It is due to change in the weather conditions. So children, till now we have learned what are the factors which will influence the demand of a consumer. Then another topic, children, it is demand function. So what is demand function? It is the mathematical expression showing the relationship between quantity demanded of a commodity and the factors that determine it. So till now we have learned what are the factors which will determine the demand, isn't it, children? So we have a equation for this demand function. Dx is equal to f of px, ps, pc, y and t. Okay, so what is dx? So dx means quantity demand of a commodity x, any commodity, it can be any commodity. Then f is, it expresses the relationship between the dependent and independent variables. Then P of X is the price of its own commodity. Then PS, it is the price of substitute goods. Then PC, children, it is the price of complementary goods. Then Y, income of the consumer. And T, it is the taste and preference of the consumer. So demand function, it explains the relationship between the quantity demanded of a commodity and the factors which will decide it. So children, there are three types of demand. First one is price demand, cross demand, and third one is income demand. So let us see about these demands in detail, children. So first one is price demand. So what is price demand? So this price demand, it explains the relationship between price and quantity demanded of a commodity. So there is a inverse relationship between the price and the quantity demanded. So it is assumed that other factors like consumers' income, prices of substitutes and complementaries, taste and preference of the consumer, these all remaining constant. If there is a change in price, there will be a change in demand. So such demand is called as price demand. And price demand is also called as law of demand. So we have a definition for this law, children. See, the amount demanded increases with a fall in price and diminishes with a rise in price, then other things remaining the same. This definition, it is given by Professor Marshall. So it means that this law explains the relationship between the price and the quantity demanded of a commodity. So the equation for this law of demand is dx is equal to f of px. It means that demand for any commodity, it depends on the price of that commodity. So when the price of a commodity is high, the demand for that commodity will be less. And when the price of a commodity is less, the demand for that commodity will be high. So this is the law of demand. The law is developed by Alfred Marshall. So this law clearly states that when price increases, demand increases. And when price increases, demand decreases. Okay, children. And other factors, they should remain constant. So when you observe the demand curve, it will be sloping downwards from left to right. It means that it has a negative slope. So this law can be explained very clearly with the help of a demand schedule, children. What is a demand schedule? So demand schedule means it is the list of all the quantity demanded at different prices in a given period of time in a market. It means what is the quantity demanded at different prices by an individual consumer. Okay, so the demand schedule is of two types, children. First one is individual demand schedule and the second one is market demand schedule. So we'll see what is an individual demand schedule. So this is the list of various quantities of commodities which are purchased at different prices by a single consumer in the market. So this is the individual demand schedule, children. See, if you look at this table, we have price of apples in rupees and quantity demanded in units. See, when the price of apple is 50 rupees, then the consumer, he demanded 5 units of apple. And when the price of apple is 40, the quantity demanded is 10. And when the price has reduced to 30 rupees, the demand, it has increased. They purchased 15 units of apples. Then still when the price has gone down to 20 rupees, 20 apples are being purchased. And see, observe the table, children. Here the price of apple has gone down to 10 rupees. So the quantity demanded has increased to 25. So what do you observe in this table? See, when the price of a commodity is decreasing, the quantity demand is increasing. So the same individual demand schedule can be represented in form of a individual demand curve. So this is the graphical representation of individual demand schedule, children. See, x-axis. X-axis represents the quantity demanded of a commodity. Then y-axis, it represents the price of apples. See, when the price of apple is 5, see the quantity demanded is 50. And when the price of apple is 50, the quantity demanded is 5. When the price of apple is 40, the quantity demanded is 10. So what is happening here? As the price of commodity is increasing, the quantity demand is also increasing. So the demand curve, it slopes downwards. Next, children, it is the market demand schedule. So what is market demand schedule? It tells about the total demand for a commodity by adding up the individual schedules of all the consumers in the market. Means what is the demand made by all the consumers in the market. So this is the market demand schedule, children. See here the price of apples are given. Then quantity demanded of the consumer. So here we have taken 3 consumers, A, B and C, and this is the market demand for apples. So when the price of apple is 5 rupees, A purchased 4 and B purchased 5 apples and C has purchased 6 apples. So the total market demand is 15 apples. And when the price is 4 rupees, A purchased 6, B purchased 8 and C has purchased 10. So the market demand is 24. And when the price has gone down to 3 rupees, so the quantity demanded by A is 8, B is 11 and C is 14, children. And the market demand is 33. So when the price of apple has become 1 rupee, see children, when it has become 1 rupee, the quantity demanded by A is 12, B is 17 and C is 22. So the whole market demand is 51. So they all have demanded 51 units of apples. So this is the graphical representation of individual demand curves. So this is the market demand curve, children. See, this is the demand curve of A, this is the individual demand curve of B, and this is the individual demand curve of C. So when we combine all these things, we will get a market demand curve. Now, children, we have certain assumptions of law of demand. So it means that what is meant by this assumption means this law will be applicable only if the below mentioned points are fulfilled. So first one is no change in the income of the consumer. Yes, we assume that there will be no change in the income of the consumer. If at all, if the income of the consumer increases, what happens? His demand, means his purchasing power will increase. He'll try to demand more of the commodities. So in such cases, the law will not be applicable. Then second assumption, children, no change in taste and preference of the consumer. So here the taste and preference of the consumer should be constant. If the consumer is influenced by the advertisements, or if he want to change his fashion, then what happens? Definitely his preference for the commodity will change. So then this law will be invalid. And no change in price of substitutes and complementary goods. So the price of these goods should be constant. If the price of substitutes and complementary goods changes, then what happens is the people, instead of buying that commodity, they prefer to buy it's a substitute good and complementary good. So in such situation also, the law will be invalid. And fourth point, children, no new substitutes are discovered. So it means that we should see that, we assume that there will be no substitute for that good. Or what happens? The preference of the consumer will change. And no expectation of future price changes. We assume that the price of the commodity will not change in future. If it changes, what happens? If the price of the commodity is going to increase in future, then what happens? People will buy now only. So in such situations, this law is not valid or it is not applicable. So these are the assumptions of law of demand. Now children, we'll see what are the, so we have observed, see you observe here, the demand curve, it is sloping downwards from left to right. So now we will see what are the reasons for a negative slope of demand curve, why it is sloping from left to right. The first reason, children, it is old and new buyers. See, when the price of a good falls, so what happens? The real income of the people will increase. So what is real income? Means the number of goods and services the consumer will buy with his nominal income is called as real income. So if the prices decreases, in now the consumer, he will be able to buy more number of goods and services. So in such situation, his real income will increase. So the people who already they buy, the consumers, they are called as old buyers. So when the price of commodity decreases, the real income of the old buyers will increase. So in such situation, they'll try to demand more goods. And new buyers. New buyers means, see, these people, they didn't buy that commodity till now. Now what happens? Due to fall in the price of that commodity, they will purchase that commodity. Why? Because they were unable to buy that product when the price was high. So as there is a fall in the price, now they will be able to purchase that commodity. So this is also one of the reason for slope of demand curve. Another reason, children, it is income effect. So with a fall in price of the commodity, what happens? The real income of the consumer, it will increase. So what he'll do, he'll try to spend his increased real income on the same good if it is a superior good. See, when most of the people, what they'll do, see, when the price of the gold, when it comes down, okay, what we'll do, we'll try to purchase that, isn't it? So why we are preferring to buy that gold? Because the the real income of the consumer has increased. Then another reason, children, it is substitution effect. So what is substitution effect? Substitution of one commodity for another commodity is called as substitution effect. So when we substitute one good for another good, that good will become cheaper. So when the price of a commodity falls, its substitute good will become cheaper, and people prefer to substitute that good for this good. So we'll explain with the help of a example, children. When the price of Colgate paste, see here, Colgate and Close-Up are substitute goods. So when the price of Colgate paste increases, then what happens? People, they won't buy Close-Up, they won't buy Colgate. So instead of that, they'll try to demand the close-up. It means that they substitute close-up in place of Colgate. So this is the reason why the demand curve slopes downwards. Then another reason, children, it is law of diminishing marginal utility. So we all know that according to this law, if an individual consumes more of a particular commodity, the utility which he gets from the additional unit, that will diminish. So in such situation, what happens? The consumer, he prefers to pay very less price to that additional units. So in such situation, he will purchase only when the price of the commodity falls. So when that good is available at less price, then only he will try to demand that commodity. Why? Because see, he is not at all having any satisfaction from that commodity. Then another reason, children, multiple use of a commodity. See, there are certain commodities which can be used for multiple purpose, like milk, coal, and electricity. So we'll take the example of milk, children. So milk is used for making curd, we can make paneer, and we can make ghee, and we can use it in making sweets and ice creams. Okay, so it means that that particular commodity is used for many purpose. So when the price of milk falls, what happens? The demand for the milk will be increased. So due to this reason also, the demand curve, it slopes downwards. So children, till now we have learned what are the reasons for decrease in the demand curve or downward slope of the demand curve. Now there are some exceptions. There are some exceptions to law of demand. In certain cases, see, we know that when the price is high, the demand is less, and when the price is low, demand will be more, and the demand curve, it slopes downwards. But in certain cases, in some cases, what happens is the demand curve, it slopes from left to right. It slopes upwards from left to right. So this kind of slope is called as a positive slope. So under certain circumstances, consumers, what they do is they buy more when the price of the commodity is high, and they buy less when the price falls. So there are many reasons why there is a upward slope of demand curve. The first reason, children, the first reason is Giffen's paradox. So what is a paradox? Means it is a statement which is self-contradictory. So this Giffen's paradox, it is named after Sir Robert Giffen. So he observed that when the price of bread increased, uh, the low paid wage earners, they purchased more of bread by reducing the consumption of wheat. Why? Because the main staple food of these wage earners is bread only. So in such situations, what they have done is they were forced to cut down their consumption of meat and other expensive food items. So this phenomena is called as Giffen's paradox. So the goods of these type are called as Giffen goods. Example, ragi, jowar, bajra, and broken rice. It means that when the price of bread increased, the demand for bread increased. Another exception, children, it is Veblen goods. So Thorsten Veblen, he has pointed that there are some goods like diamonds, precious stones, costly furniture, etc. So these are demanded by rich people. Why? Because in order to maintain social status in the society, to maintain a status in the society. So when the price of these goods fall, what happens is these people, they don't prefer to buy them. Why? Because when the price of these goods fall, the poor people who were unable to buy earlier, now they will prefer to buy that commodity. So in such situation, the rich people, they don't prefer to buy. Why? Because they don't have any special status. So that is the reason when there is a fall in the price of these precious goods, the demand also will be reduced. The next one, children, speculation effect. So if price of commodities are expected to increase in future, what the consumers will do is they will buy more of it now only. See, we have experienced it recently. See, the price of onions have increased, isn't it? So in such situation, the consumers, what they have thought, they expected that in future again the price of onions may increase. So keeping that in view, they purchased more of onions. So increase in price is not accompanied by decrease in demand. So example, we can take the share market also. See, most of the people, they buy shares. So keeping in view that the value of share will increase in future. So they will purchase the shares at high prices only. Then another factor, children, another exception is illusion. So sometimes many consumers, they have a false idea that high priced goods have better qualities and low priced goods have a very low quality. And if the price of such goods decreases, they feel that the quality of that good has totally deteriorated. So in such situation, the rich people, they don't want to buy these goods. Why? Because in order to maintain their status, they don't prefer to buy the goods when there is a fall in the price of that commodity. There are other reasons also, children. See, the law of demand, when the price of basic necessities. See, basic necessities, like we need food grains, clothes, and clothes. Okay, so when the price of these commodities change, whether the price of commodities increase or decrease, there will be no change in the demand, isn't it? And life saving drugs also. See, we buy medicines. So even though the price of the medicine is high, we still buy that commodity. And there are some commodities where people are habituated to it, like people have liquor. So when the price of the liquor increases also, they prefer to buy that good at high prices. And there are few people that they fear that there will be a shortage of commodity. If they think that there is going to be a shortage of commodity in future, keeping that in view, they try to purchase it now only at high prices. And due to change in weather conditions also, the people prefer to purchase the other commodities. So these are all the exceptions for law of demand. And during lockdown period also, see children, in this pandemic situation, consumers, they expected that there will be a scarcity of commodities. So keeping that in view, they have purchased more of the commodities. So that purchasing is called as panic buying. So these are all the exceptions of law of demand. So, however, the law has its own significance. It has its own importance, and it helps the product producers in determining the price of the product. See, keeping the view of the consumers, view of consumers' demand, the producers, he will fix the price of the commodities. And this law of demand, it will help us to understand the consumer's behavior in purchase, means how the consumer behaves while he purchases a commodity. What are the things he keeps in mind while purchasing a commodity? And it is also helpful to government while formulating the taxation policies also. So there are some changes in the demand, children. So there are two types of changes. One is extension and contraction, and the other is increase and decrease. So what is extension and contraction? So change in quantity refers to increase or decrease in quantity, purchase of a commodity in response to decrease or increase of its own price, and other things remaining constant. Means keeping other factors constant. If there is a change in demand only due to change in price, that change is called as extension and contraction. So more units are demanded at low price and less units are demanded at high price. So we can observe this in a graph. We can represent it on a graph, children. See, the x-axis represents the quantity demanded, and y-axis, it represents the price of a commodity. See, when the price of a commodity is OP, the quantity demanded is OQ. When the price of commodity has increased from OP2, the quantity demand has increased to OQ1. And when the price of commodity has reduced from OP to OP1, the quantity demand has increased to OQ1. So here, what is happening? When the price of commodity is high, the quantity demanded is less. When the price of a commodity is less, the quantity demand is more. So when you join all these points, we get a demand curve. This is a downward sloping demand curve. So the point from R to C. So the point from R to C is called as contraction of demand, and point from R to E is called as extension of demand. Then another change, children, it is increase and decrease in demand. So here, increase or decrease in demand, it takes place due to changes in other determinants of demand, like change in the income, or change in the price of substitutes and complementaries, or change in the consumers. And here, the price of the commodity will be constant. See here, the x-axis represents the quantity demand and y-axis represents the price of the commodity. So here the price of the commodity is constant. So it is constant. So this is the demand curve, children. So when the price of commodity is OP, the quantity demanded is OQ. So DD is the demand curve. It is sloping downwards. So due to increase in the income of the consumers, so what happens? The purchasing power of the consumer will increase. So with that, what happens? There will be an increase in the quantity demanded. When the income increases, the people, they purchase more of that commodity. So the demand curve, it shifts towards the right side. So the new shift in the demand curve is D1. And when there is a change in the taste and preference of the consumers, means now the consumer taste has changed. He don't want to buy that commodity. So what happens? Now he don't buy much of that. His demand will be reduced. So the demand curve, it shifts towards the left side. So this new demand curve is D2. Okay. So the point from Q to Q2 is called as decrease in demand, and from OQ to OQ1 is called as increase in demand. So there are two types of changes in demand, children. One is extension and contraction of demand, and the other is increase and decrease in demand. Then another type of demand, children, the second one is income demand. So this income demand, it explains the relationship between the consumer's income and the various quantities of goods and services demanded at various levels of income, assuming other factors remaining constant. See, there are many factors which will decide the demand. So here, keeping other factors as constant, there is a change in demand due to change in income. So that demand is called as income demand. So here there is an equation for income demand. Dx is equal to f of y. So it means that demand for a commodity, it depends on the income of the consumer. So the relationship between the income and the demand is inverse, or it can be a direct relationship based on the nature of the commodity. So children, this is the income demand schedule. So this income demand schedule, it explains the relationship between various levels of income and the quantity demanded for both superior goods and inferior goods. So children, when the income of the consumer is 2000, so the demand for superior good is 4 kgs and demand for inferior good is 12 kgs. So when you observe this table, as the income of the consumer is increasing from 2000 to 10,000, the demand for superior goods, that is also increasing. See children, see from 4 kgs, the demand has increased to 12 kgs. And the demand for inferior goods, when the income was 2000, it was 12 kgs. And as the income of the consumer is reduced, is increasing, the demand for inferior goods is being reduced. So what do you observe from this? As the income of the consumer increases, the demand for superior goods increase and the demand for inferior goods decreases. Superior or normal goods, we'll see how the demand curve will be in case of superior or normal goods. So when there is a increase in the income of the consumers, the quantity demand also increases. There is a positive relationship between income and quantity demanded. So the demand curve here, it slopes upwards children from left to right. See the x-axis. The x-axis represents the quantity demanded and y-axis represents the income of the consumer. So when the income of the consumer is OY, the quantity demanded is OQ. And when the income has increased from OY to OY1, the quantity demanded also has increased to OQ1. So it means that when income of a consumer increases, the demand for demand also increases. So that is the reason we observe the demand curve is sloping upwards from left to right in case of superior or normal goods. Then we have inferior goods children. We'll see how the income demand curve will be for inferior goods. See, when the quantity demand for inferior goods decrease, when the income of the consumer increase, the quantity demand for inferior goods, what happens? It will decrease. So there is a inverse relationship between income and the quantity demanded. So here the demand curve, it slopes downwards from left to right. Observe this in this graph children. See the x-axis represents the quantity demanded and y-axis it represents the income of the consumer. See, when the income of the consumer is OY, the quantity demanded is OQ. When the income of the consumer has increased from OY to OY1, the quantity demand has reduced to OQ1. It means that when income increases, the quantity demanded for inferior goods, it decreases. So that is the reason why the income demand curve is sloping downwards. Then another type of demand children, it is cross demand. So what is cross demand? It explains the relationship between any two goods which are either complementary goods or supplement or substitute goods. So here other things like price of the good, income of the consumer, taste and preference remaining constant, the quantity demand, it depends on the price of its related good. Okay. So when there is a change in the price of the related goods, the demand will change. So here, demand of a commodity, it depends on the price of its related goods, or it can be a substitute good or a complementary good. So the equation for this cross demand is dx is equal to f of py. So here dx is the demand for x commodity, and py means it is a price of y commodity, or it's a substitute good or it's a complementary good. So we'll see how the cross demand will be if the good is a substitute good. So we know that the substitute goods are those goods which will satisfy the same want. So examples of substitute goods are tea and coffee, Colgate and Close-Up, Coca-Cola and Pepsi. So these are all the substitute goods. So we'll see how the demand curve will be for substitute goods. So here the demand, cross demand is positive. Okay, it is positive relationship. So when the price of the coffee, when the price of coffee is 5 rupees, the quantity demanded is 50 cups. And tea also, when the price of tea is 5, the quantity demanded of tea cups is 500. So now when the price of coffee has reduced to 4 rupees, okay, so what happens? The people, when the price of tea, when the price of tea has, when the price of tea has increased to 5 rupees, so the people, they will demand the coffee. So we can explain this in form of a graph, children. See, when the x-axis represents the quantity demand of tea, and y-axis represents the price of a coffee. See, when the price of coffee is OY, the quantity demand of tea is OQ. When the price has increased to OY1, the quantity demand has increased to OQ1. And still there is a increase in the price of coffee, the quantity demand also has increased to OQ2. So it means that when a price of a commodity increases, the demand for its substitute good will increase. So it means that there is a positive relationship between the price of a good and its substitute good. So that is the reason we observe that the cross demand for a substitute good, it is sloping upward. The demand curve is sloping upwards. Now we'll see how the cross demand will be for a complementary good. So children, what are complementary goods? Those goods which satisfy the same want jointly are called as complementary goods. Example, car and fuel, or shoe and socks, bread and butter. See, these are all called as complementary goods. So here the relationship between the complementary goods is inverse relationship. See, when the price of fuel, is 75 rupees, the demand for fuel is 500, and the demand for its complementary good is 1000. So when the price of fuel has reduced to 50, so what happens? The demand for car also increased. So people purchased more of cars. So we can show this on a graph, children. See, x-axis, it represents the quantity demand of a car, and y-axis, it represents the price of a fuel. See, when the price of a fuel is OP, the quantity demand is OQ. When there is a fall in the price of fuel from OP to OP1, the quantity demand has increased to OQ1. And still there is a fall in the price of fuel from OP to OP2. So what happens? The quantity demand for car also will increase. So it has increased from OQ to OQ2. So the demand curve, the cross demand curve, it slopes downwards. It means that when the price of a commodity decreases, the demand for its complementary good will increase. So children, I hope you all have understood the lesson. Let us recollect what we have learned today in this session. So children, we have learned what is meant by demand. So demand, it is the desire. We should have a desire and we should have the purchasing power to buy that commodity. And we also have learned about the individual and market demand schedules and individual and market demand curves. And we also have learned what is a demand function. And we also have learned what are the factors. There are various factors which decide the demand for a commodity. And we also have learned the law of demand. And we also have learned the assumptions. There are various assumptions for law of demand. And we also have learned the reasons why the demand curve it slopes downwards. And there are many exceptions to law of demand. And we also have learned about the income demand and cross demand. Now children, there are few questions for you. This will come in your IP. See, the first question is price demand, demand function, what is market demand schedule, and Giffen paradox. See, these questions, they'll come for 2 marks. Then explain the factors determining demand for a good, explain the law of demand and what are its exceptions, and explain the concepts of demand and concepts of income and cross demand with suitable diagrams, and illustrate the reasons for negative slope of demand curve. So children, these all 4 questions, they'll come for 5 marks in your IP. Thank you, children.
Thank you, madam, for a wonderful presentation. The presentation was attractive, captivating. It has covered all the topics, related topics with very good examples.
ట్రాన్సిషన్ టైం అన్మ్యూట్ చేస్తాను మాట్లాడు
Hello. So students, certainly all of you have understood the various concepts of demand, its related topics. These are all the observation which we see in our daily life in the intermarket. So students, now it is a responsibility to sit and prepare the notes on the topics that are explained today. It is very much needed for your IP examination. So whatever the questions that have been asked in the session, it is your duty to answer that by referring to the textbook also. So we shall meet again in the next webinar session with other topics. In meantime, complete your notes and stay safe. Thank you very much. Thank you, madam.
Thank you, sir.